Game code for Suikoden HD provided by Konami. It is up to you whether that matters or not. These HD 2D remasters we've been getting over the last few years have been great excuses for companies to go back and revive their IPs from the graveyard. There was that time period I like to call the West really hated RPGs suddenly for some reason, and no one ever really understood why, so companies stopped making the games people hated for no reason and tried focusing on what the West loved instead, only to realize that that was the wrong choice to make. Which is why it's been interesting to see the redirection back to games that deserve that second shot, that warrant that attempt to get into people's heads again. Which brings us to Suikoden 1 and 2 HD Remaster, a re-release of the first two Suikoden games that come with fancy new visuals and plenty of little additions to make the experience a little smoother, like autosaves and speed up in battles. The essence of these games remain about as intact as you could possibly make them though, all things considered. The music is the same, the sound effects are almost the same, and the vibes are extremely similar. Remasters like these come in handy for everyone that still clings to their backlogs, because it fires off something in our brains that artificially starts that engine, that makes us want to experience these games in the here and now instead of the over there and later. And you could say that that's because it feels like a new thing, and I suppose that's part of it, sure. But frankly, I kind of hate playing new games. Hell, look at my channel and try to pick out how many brand new games I've covered on here. I talked about Lords of Shadow in 2024 for God's sake. No, instead I think remasters make me interested because of the inherently unique position it puts the audience in. You get two inherently unique sides of the field, one being the hardcore veteran players that know these games better than you know yourself. And on the other side, we've got little greenhorns that are about to step into something that they have no idea about. And look! There's me. This then kicks up conversations, discussions, comparisons of the old and new, complaints about systems from 20 plus years ago that modern audiences may not be used to, belly aching about time savers or fixes that send off some of the texture that the original release had, which gave the old fans the memories that they've cherished their whole lives. And all of this is a lot of noise. It's an overwhelming amount of perspectives, arguments, and potential opinions that I absolutely love digging into. Not just in terms of the Suikoden remaster, but every remaster that fits within the HD 2D sort of mold. But before we get into anything too meaty, let me just get the review part of this out of the way. Do you want to play Suikoden 1 and 2 and don't want to emulate them? Then yes. No, in all seriousness, I would say that these are very good ways to play these two games. This has been my first ever experience with Suikoden, and I've had a blast going through these two and seeing what they're cooking up. I've gone back and spent some time with the original releases too, and they're more than worth playing as well. But if you want to play Suikoden with a shiny coat of paint, then these are really a good time. Things like speed up in battles, autosaves, and the much cleaner UI make the games a very smooth experience all around. And then there's the best change, being able to run around from the very start. That's genuinely a game changer, and that's all well and good. But why should you play Suikoden? Well, let's get into it. Suikoden is an RPG where, after a series of events, you are tasked with forming an army to take down an oppressive regime. And to do this, you'll explore towns and villages, helping people with their problems, stopping evil forces from destroying the land, and facing a handful of difficult choices along the way. Suikoden is a story about the horrors of war, but also the unfortunate necessity that such a conflict is in a world like this. Taking the battle to the oppressors is the only way we can enact true change in this world for the betterment of everyone, after all. These games know how to have a little fun too, though. There's a certain whimsy here and funny jokes to give the darker moments in the game some levity. And though both games have kinda slow starts in my opinion, when the rhythm starts rhythming, the journey doesn't stop going. Assembling your army grants you dozens upon dozens of characters to use in battle, but you also get quirky characters too, whose sole purpose is to change the style of borders the text boxes have on screen. There's elements to Suikoden that may not necessarily fit together just from the sounds of them, but there's confidence in this presentation too, and it's undeniable that there's something to this mix that really works. Suikoden balances the moments where it doesn't take things too seriously with situations that absolutely do. Your units can permanently die in some situations, and the story does take some darker turns here and there and lets you sit with those moments too. The battle system on offer here isn't anything too crazy though. It's a pretty standard turn-based affair where you select your team of up to 6 characters characters' actions one after the other and then watch the round play out. Frankly, for most of the game's battles, you can just slap the auto button, press fast forward, and win 80% of these fights. Boss fights need a little more of a careful approach though, so you may want to learn the systems on offer as best as you can so you don't get trounced the moment things get that little bit trickier. This is when building a team and figuring out which characters you want to use is really fun. Each character has something that'll make them an interesting member of the team, whether it's just a character you vibe with or someone that comes with a special rune that'll grant them a sick ability. Suddenly, the dozens of party members you gather will form a much wider team that gives Suikoden a lot of replayability. I already want to do another run of the first game and try out party combinations that I didn't before. In that sense, there's something honest about both of these games, whose mechanics and systems are simple but extremely effective, building up armies to take down tyrannical empires, focusing less on difficulty and mechanical density and more so on the adventure to meet new people and understand the world through the cultures you engage with. Both games focus on meeting and recruiting a diverse cast of characters, each with their own backstory and life lived, and this is really what the core of the games are about, more so than any other element. As an RPG, both games have a pretty simple structure and battle system that doesn't pose much of a threat on the normal difficulty, but if you wanted to spice things up a bit, you could always step it up to hard mode. Either way, there's a tactical edge to the way you can compose teams based on their attack ranges, short, medium, or long, which dictate which enemies a unit can attack dependent on where they stand. Then there's the need to have magic users as well as heavy-hitting melee attackers, and the characters who tag along because they're cool as hell and they have a good vibe. These are games that have depth if you want it, but don't make understanding its systems a necessary requirement, making it the best of both worlds in that sense. You can really delve into recruiting everyone, getting the best equipment whenever you can, grinding to your heart's content, but none of that is something that you have to do, or at the very least, punished for not doing. To me, the appeal of Suikoden is seeing your cast of characters grow and grow, to see a hollowed out ruin become a home and a symbol that change can happen if we fight for it. That no matter what tyranny we face, we can take it down with the help of our elf boys and our scrimblows united as one. Suikoden 2 is a breath of fresh air in some respects too, because unlike each Final Fantasy that takes place in its own world and Dragon Quests here, there, and everywhere timeline, Suikoden 2 picks up sometime after the first game and continues the story of its world and characters, along with a fresh perspective and new characters to meet, of course. It's here though that I want to talk about the memories that we think we have. HD 2D remasters have to walk the line between updating the visuals of the experience while keeping the vibes intact, which I can imagine is a hard job to do. There's not the room that you'd have in a full-blown remake to go crazy and add in however many details you'd want as a creative, which depending on your stance surrounding remake culture could be seen as a good thing or a bad thing. But an HD 2D remaster's job is to take what you think you remember and slap it onto your favorite console. And diving into the visual differences between these two versions of the games has been really interesting. The big difference is obviously that the remasters are not composed of pixel art like the original games were. In these new versions, we've got much higher fidelity rendered backgrounds that absolutely give plenty of detail to some background elements, but don't lend themselves as well to the grit and grime from before, I would say. But I'm a bit of two minds on this one. I think that the way everything looks is really nice overall, and it reflects the vibe of the original games splendidly. And removed from any critical opinions that I or anyone else has about it, it's a very good thing that these remasters exist and are presented in the way that they are. With how Konami has spent the last decade as a gaming company, it was easy to write off a lot of their catalog for the foreseeable future. But this marks an important step not only in preserving these classic games on modern systems and giving players too scared to emulate or fork over an unspecified amount of money for an older system and the copy of the game a chance to finally play Suikoden for themselves. Expanding potential audiences and keeping these games in some sort of circulation is the right thing to do, and it's something that Konami has been pretty decent about overall, I would say, even if I have some complaints about their efforts regarding Silent Hill's catalog on modern hardware and the state of the Metal Gear Master Collection, which seems to be in better shape these days. But yeah, if you've been on the fence about whether or not you want to get the Suikoden remasters, I'd say do it. They're pretty good.